Greetings everyone, we are glad to have you here. In this video, we want to show you our Hexblast Poison build guide. Poison is a damaging ailment that is usually associated with a flurry of smaller hits, each applying instances of lesser poisons that eventually lead to a very high damage over time effect. It offers very strong single target damage but usually lacks the upfront damage, which is very noticeable during regular mapping. However, this build has a completely different approach to poison ailment. Instead of many smaller hits, we opt for a powerful single strike that inflicts immense poison on enemies. We are doing it by using Hexblast skill. It's a very impressive spell that is naturally connected to the Hex skills. The main feature of this build is low tolerance, notable found on medium cluster jewel. It offers a 300% increased damage with poison we apply to the non-poisoned enemy, and we can use a multitude of them. In this build, we use 6 such jewels and 1 mastery and passive tree with the same effect. In the end, it grants an insane 2100% damage increase with a single poison. We also use a newly introduced skill, an Alchemist mark, to more than double our single target damage. This mark creates a caustic ground based on the poison applied to the enemy. By manually applying Hex, such as Despair, on the enemy, it will gain Doom stacks over time, increasing the effectiveness of the said curse. When you cast Hexblast on that enemy, it will deal massively increased damage in a larger radius, depending on the amount of Doom accumulated on the enemy. Although this build has a pretty low maximum life, it is still very tanky. It's all thanks to guaranteed spell suppression, astonishing amount of evasion rating, and high armor rating. We are also completely immune to all elemental ailments. Thanks to the poison proliferation, we get very strong clearing potential. It works best on dense maps, with high monster pack size. Single target is absurdly strong. It requires self-casting curses, but the result pays off really well. Before you start, you should have enough currency to buy the required cluster jewels. Other than that, this build is rather cheap to get started and offers amazing scaling, making every small upgrade you make quite impactful. This build doesn't require any particular unique to work at all, but there are a few powerful outliners we can use to make it stronger. We utilize a very interesting synergy between Ralakesh's Impatience and Olesia's Delight that allows you to have maximum affliction charges at all times. Devouring Diadem allows you to use all of your auras. It also grants Eldritch Battery, which causes you to spend Energy Shield instead of mana to cast your spells, and saves you 2 passive skill points. Ideally, get one with attributes and Alchemist mark enchant. Apep's Rage is our best in slot weapon for this build. Faster poisons makes Caustic Ground created by Alchemist mark much stronger, and losing mana doesn't affect us as we use Energy Shield to cast skills anyway. You can dual wield them for maximum damage or use a shield for more survivability. Skin of the Lords is a very strong armor for this build. Paired with level 4 Empower support, it grants a total of +7 levels to our main skill but can also grant you the Doomsday Notable. It will allow you to instantly gain maximum Doom on your curses after 1 second, but prevent them from gaining it over that duration. If you time Hexblast properly, it's an insane DPS boost. Olesia's Delight grants you additional maximum frenzy charge, and turns your frenzy charges into affliction charges. Those will give you 8% more damage with damaging ailments, such as poison. Try to get any useful corrupted implicit here, as the original implicit is pretty bad. Ralakesh's Impatience generate all charges while being stationary, but because we actually use affliction charges instead of frenzy, you will not lose them when you move. They also grant decent movement speed and some resistances. This unique cluster jewel grants you more jewel sockets than regular rare jewel. Getting fewer small passive skills than 5 of course is better, but its cost is hard to justify. We use 2 of them in this build. There is only one combination of Forbidden Flame and Flesh that would outperform regular pair of rare jewels. It is the focal point found at Deadeye Ascendancy. It is very expensive and should only be considered if the rest of your gear is in a very good state. Watcher's Eye has some very potent possibilities for this build. For pure damage, both modifiers from Malevolence Aura are very good. You can try getting them in conjunction with some defensive aura modifiers. Rare jewels are a very important part of this build, as we use up to 9 of them. The rest of the gear is focused mostly on defense, with the exception of the amulet. You will need good rolls on spell suppression on your gear to reach the cap. On a rare shield, you can get a lot of useful modifiers to increase your tankiness. You can also get +1 level to your Chaos spell skills modifier for some extra damage. Only the intelligence bases can get that modifier, so you can't get natural spell suppression here. You will have to craft it using the crafting bench. On your rare gloves, you just need high life, elemental resistances, and spell suppression. With Eldritch Implicits, you can get even more spell suppression and some chaos damage over time multiplier. A rare amulet is a very important piece for your damage. Look for an increase to maximum doom for your hexes, and levels of your chaos spell skills or chaos damage over time multiplier. Also, try to get a bit of maximum life if you can. The only good damage modifier on your rare rings is damage over time multiplier crafted by using essences of delirium. Other than that, look for life, attributes and elemental and chaos resistances. You can have up to 9 rare jewels in this build. Try to get maximum life and chaos damage over time multiplier on every one of them. To push the damage even further, try to get the modifiers for faster poison. You can also get lacking attributes or resistances here. You want to have low tolerances notable on every medium cluster jewel you have. You will also need 3 pieces with septic spells notable on top of that to get the guaranteed poison on every spell hit. The remaining notables are rather bad in this build, so you can even skip the second notable in remaining jewels in favor of additional frenzy charges. On all of your magic utility flasks, you can roll Alchemist Prefix to get an increased effect of your flask. It also reduces the duration of those flasks, but as a Pathfinder, you will have no problem with uptime on them anyway. We suggest using this combination of magic flasks: Quicksilver Flask with additional movement speed, Life Flask with bleeding removal, Jade Flask with an increased evasion rating modifier, Quartz Flask with an increased armor rating modifier, and a Silver Flask with reduced effect of curses on you. Our main skill is Hexblast. By default, it deals moderate damage to single enemy, but if you use it on cursed enemy, it will deal much stronger damage to all nearby enemies. For clearing, you don't really need to curse enemies, as you only need to kill one enemy and poison proliferation will take care of the rest. For bosses and other tough enemies, you should wait for the first poison to end before you cast it again. Despair is a powerful hex that increases damage over time taken by enemies and lowers their chaos resistances. You will have to cast it manually, otherwise, it won't gain doom stacks. By using a Doomsday Keystone, it will gain maximum doom after 1 second. Alchemist Mark creates caustic ground upon inflicting poison on an enemy, based on the damage of the strongest poison. The damage of this ground scales very well with Mark effect. With proper helmet enchant, it deals more than double our damage. Plaguebearer stores part of your poisons to charge up, and deals damage in an area around you when released. With Divergent Alternative Quality, it grants damage over time multiplier while infecting, increasing your overall DPS significantly. You can use Enhance to boost the effects of Despair and Plaguebearer even further. Thanks to the Devouring Diadem helmet, we can use many auras in this build. First, we use Grace to significantly boost our evasion rating and enable some potent Watcher Eye modifiers. We also use Determination to gain a lot of flat armor rating and a way to scale it any further. To top it up, we use the Defiance banner, which grants bonuses to both armor and evasion ratings. It also reduces nearby enemies' critical strike chance. As a final permanent aura, we use Purity of Elements. It grants all elemental resistances, which helps with the gearing process but also makes you immune to all elemental ailments, which are notoriously dangerous. To use yet another aura, we utilize the Divine Blessing mechanic. It turns a permanent aura into a temporary buff which doesn't reserve any mana. It does however require a solid amount of mana to cast it, so we use Inspiration to reduce that cost. As every build that deals chaos damage, we use Wither to apply a very powerful debuff on the enemies. Fully stacked Wither causes enemies to take 90% more damage. You should use spell totems to apply max stacks very quickly. They die rather quickly, so try to place them at a safe distance from the enemy. Withering Steps grants you a short burst of movement speed and applies withered stacks on nearby non-withered enemies. It shares a cooldown with the Flame Dash skill. Flame Dash teleports you by a short distance. It's a great skill for closing gaps in movement between terrain levels. Molten Shell is a guard skill that creates an absorbing shield based on your armor rating. Part of the damage goes into the shield before hitting you directly. This build makes use of every passive skill point you can get. For that reason, in the Bandits quest, you should help Aramir and kill all the bandits to be rewarded with 2 bonus passive skill points. For your major Pantheon god power, we recommend getting Solo Lunaris. It provides good physical and elemental damage mitigation during mapping. As for minor Pantheon god power, we suggest getting Soul of Ralakesh, as this build has no defense against physical damage over time effects. On the passive tree, we try to take only the essential passive skills, so we can take as many medium cluster jewels as possible. For that reason, during leveling, you might want to take some extra passive skills and refund them later using respect points acquired from the quests. We recommend getting spell suppression passives early into the game, as they provide an amazing defense layer during leveling. Allocating both aura-related passive clusters will allow you to use all the auras when you equip the Devouring Diadem. You should have some passive skill points saved before you reach the required level for your medium cluster jewels, so you can take all the passives as fast as possible. Getting Septic Spell notables is necessary to get the 100% chance to poison with spell hits. To compensate for the low maximum life on the passive tree, we have many rare jewel sockets. You can get the missing maximum life on them. Additional frenzy charges are the very last passives you want to get on your passive tree. That is everything you need to know about the Hexblast Poison Pathfinder. If you've enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like. See you in the next one.